Are we recording now?
I just started recording. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I pulled up the vital stats. I think I remember who directed this one, but yeah.
John Carpenter?
If only.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's as good a place as any to start. As you know, I don't know how to start the podcast. So it'll be whatever we keep from that or something along the lines of, welcome to Late to the Movies. My name is Ben Holt, and this is a podcast where my friends and I get to fill in our movie blind spots. Each week we'll pick a film that either I or a guest hadn't seen before and really should have by now. This week, the movie continuing Halloween in June, Part 2, July, a whole month look at weird misadventures and horror sequels. 2 movies we've done in the past. We've done the original Friday the 13th. Today, we're doing Wes Craven's New Nightmare from 1994, I want to say, 10 years later.
Yes.
Notoriously, the first movie has, I think, the lowest single rating of any movie we've done on the podcast from, not me, from my friend Kyle, who I think gave it 1.5 out of 5 stars.
The first Nightmare on Elm Street?
Yes.
Damn, okay.
Which, like, considering where that franchise goes, I don't know if the scale, he's thrown off the whole bell curve for
Shout
everything.
out Dream Warriors. I don't know if you've seen Dream Warriors either. Oh.
Much like the previous episode where I had only seen the first, I totally said Friday the 13th. I meant Nightmare on Elm Street.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. We can restart if you want.
I was thinking of Jason X again. I've only seen the first Friday the 13th.
It's hard to forget Jason X.
I haven't seen any of the 8 films in between. I haven't seen any of the 5 movies in between Nightmare on Elm Street, which I'll edit myself saying correctly the first time. Just add one extra. And Wes Craven's New Nightmare with the 7th film in the franchise. 7 films in 10 years because New Line Cinema needed money.
Wes Craven needed money. He showed off his crib in the movie. You saw how that money, that sick pool in Beverly Hills or wherever in Hollywood he has.
This movie was pretty fascinating. I want to talk about it, but first, Patrick's here again. How's it going?
It's going well. How's everybody doing?
I'm good.
Good.
I hope the folks at home are too. Have you been watching anything good recently?
I have. We spoke briefly about it and we saved a little bit of the discussion, but saw Maxine in theaters as well as Longlegs. Also watched The Craft at home recently. So been on a little bit of a horror kick in anticipation of New Nightmare. And that's kind of that. Watching a lot of King of the Hill as filler, which is excellent. Love King of the Hill.
It's a good palate cleanser if you're only watching horror movies. And
exactly. King of the Hill and Vice Principals. So nice. Kind of cycling through those TV shows and then punctuating them at movies here and there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Haven't seen Maxine yet. I've never seen The Craft. Worth going back for?
Oh yeah. If you've not, if you're a fan of 90s horror films, The Craft is essential viewing.
Okay.
Yeah.
90s horror, interesting. I mean, we're talking Wes Craven today, who is where my mind goes for sort of the culmination of 90s horror with Scream.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay.
He's kind of like the king of 90s horror. And then The Craft is like, it's great. It's got Vicky Valancourt from The Waterboy. And it was a rewatch. I haven't seen it since I was really young. And I enjoyed it. It was good.
Awesome. I have seen Longlegs though, so we can talk about that.
Yeah, let's talk about Longlegs.
In advance of that, to get ready, I watched Blackcoat's Daughter, Oz Perkins' first film, which because of the weird release schedule in America, I think came out after or was available after I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, but he made it first. So that's on the Oz Perkins side. On the Mike and Monroe side, I watched It Follows. Nice. All in like the 24 hours before I went to see Longlegs in theater.
First time seeing It Follows? I've not seen Blackcoat's Daughter.
It was first time for both of those. I hadn't seen either.
Okay.
And I remember it coming out and then I feel like I had missed the moment on It Follows, it being sort of like an indie darling.
I saw it much later. I saw it maybe 2-3 years ago. And I was like, I didn't love it as much as I felt like everybody else loved it.
Yeah.
I liked it just fine, but I felt like it didn't hit as hard for me as I think what the anticipation I had was based on people really enjoying that movie.
both of those movies and Long Legs have really great atmosphere and mood and sort of control of what's happening. And I don't really feel like the actual scare moments in them are like on the level of like, on the level of what the advertising for Long Legs would make you think Legs is going to be like.
I thought Long Legs was great.
Yeah, I do too. But it's more to me like unsettling, and I love the mood, and I love the atmosphere.
I get
That's
that.
the best part of it for me.
I also intentionally tried my best to stay away from any. Like I didn't watch the trailer for it until I went to go see Maxine, and the trailer was before. Like I didn't seek out the trailer.
Yeah, they made you.
They forced me to do it. And so like I'm a big proponent of like maybe watch a trailer once or twice and not read to spoil my viewing of things, especially when it comes to horror movies, because I feel like there's a tendency to like oversell, especially this kind of like moment of indie horror films.
Yeah,
I feel like there's a big overselling of it.
I don't know who's profiting, but there is a concerted effort. I think it's just wanting to feel like you're there for the thing, right?
Yeah.
You want to be part of the moment, and so you want everything to be the moment.
Yeah, it's the post Blair Witch horror
For sure.
thing. Yeah, it's like everything. It's the marketing package. It's not just the film. It's everything that comes along with it.
I think a lot of horror fans are sort of like alternative and indie rock band fans where it's like, I was there at the beginning. I saw that in theaters.
Yeah. Like I remember early A24 movies
Yeah.
and like I saw Nick Cage. This isn't Nick Cage's first rodeo with horror films. I'm a fan of Vampire's Kiss. It's like, or, Mandy in this instance or something like that, right? Like,
for real.
But yeah, I really liked Long Legs. I thought it was like, and I mentioned this to you, but like I feel like if Long Legs was season 2 of True Detective after the first season, I feel like there wouldn't be any question that it delivered.
Yeah.
I feel like it's definitely a movie that's going to be revisited and people are going to be like, oh, that was great. Like that was really good. And once the kind of fog of the Twitter, kind of like every article on every movie review website talking about it. Like once that lifts and it's revisited, I think it'll stick. I mean, it's also like, I commend it for, I think, smartly paying homage to like Silence of the Lambs without like remaking it.
Yeah.
It embraced some of the supernatural stuff, whereas Silence of the Lambs is so grounded in like psychology.
For sure.
And whereas this like is willing to go to kind of weird places. So
I listened to a really good article with Oz Perkins where he was talking about wanting to be in conversation with the things that are influencing it, not hiding from that and making it like, yeah, obviously we know we're doing Silence of the Lambs and a little bit of Zodiac and some Seven here. But what are you doing to stand out and what makes it different? And how can you not necessarily subvert or go against it, but what are you doing that's different? Up to like, well, the bad guys, instead of being dressed in black, he's dressed in white and his face is all white.
Yeah.
So just thinking of little ways to make yourself different is sort of how he was coming at wearing these influences on his sleeve, but also taking kind of a turn.
It's also an immersive enough experience. Like I feel like the opening sequence with the bright red screen, it like I've not seen a movie that assaults your eyes so quickly and so intensely, to where like when it cuts from that bright red screen straight to like the when it cuts from that bright red screen to that kind of snow scene, it's like you're almost kind of in this like blue haze, which I loved. I thought was great.
Yeah. That scene was awesome too.
Yeah.
That first scene is incredible. There's a lot of stuff that they do where it's a camera. Oh my God. You know what I mean? It's so you understand there's cameras and that's how they record the images that they project on the wall in the movie theater. No, I meant in the frame, every part of it is so considered. And I realize that's how art's made, but sometimes it's just the thing where it's like, oh, I wouldn't have thought to make everything look this awesome and not just good, but menacing. Every corner of the frame is like, something bad's going to happen over there.
Yeah, and I saw like that like there's
until like the last 20 minutes of the movie, where it kind of just does some stuff.
Yeah, but I saw the 18 hidden like devil in the background, like their tweet.
I gotta go back. I didn't know about those.
Oh, you didn't?
There's a couple times where
there's
a quick cut and you saw like a shadow with like some horns or
there's
something.
There's apparently 18 of those.
Okay, I caught a couple of those.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, this movie feels like a evolution of Blackcoat's Daughter, which I don't think it's just because I watched it within 20 hours the first time that I saw Blackcoat's Daughter, of then going to see Longlegs in theaters, whatever. But it's dealing with not necessarily the same exact topic, but a lot of the same way that he executes it.
Yeah, that's a good segue to Wes Craven, New Nightmare.
Yeah.
And Scream, which is why I recommended we maybe do this movie, because you're a big fan of Scream,
Love
right?
Scream, but I'd never seen this.
Yeah.
And it's crazy he hasn't made Scream yet when this comes out.
Right? This is kind of the germ of Scream.
Yeah.
You see it all in this.
Because Scream's what, 96, 97?
96, yeah.
So yeah, just a couple years later. But
yeah.
Yikes. Yeah, you can definitely see the germ. It felt a lot like Scream 3, with them actually like talking about the business and being Scream 3's happening in Hollywood, and there's scripts and they're worried about producers and directors, and Parker Posey's there. So it's not as bad as everyone says it is. Scream 3's great.
That's good. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I like this a lot.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it before. You had, right?
Yep.
And we can get into it more deeply, but we usually start with a 1-minute plot summary. I can give it a shot. You can give it a shot. I don't know.
How about you give it a shot? I did last time.
Okay, sounds good. I always go long, so I'll try and keep it short. So, real life Heather Langenkamp, who plays Nancy in 1984 Nightmare on Elm Street, is starting to get calls from somebody who's pretending to be Freddy, and there's earthquakes happening in LA, and there's a rumor that Wes Craven is going to be writing a script that brings back Freddy. In the world, they're like, God, we're done with that. Freddy's dead, because, again, I've only seen 2 Nightmare movies, but I assume one of the ones before this, he dies.
Yes.
Anyway, which I don't know why that would be an issue. He's been dead the whole time, but whatever. I don't know.
Don't think too much about it.
Anyway, so a lot of stuff starts happening where essentially Freddy is coming into the real world, even though Robert Englund is around as an actor that Heather Langenkamp is not super comfortable around, but is kind of comfortable around.
Hard to be comfortable around him with those glasses.
Oh my God. And what ends up being the case is that Wes Craven, I guess, either intentionally or unintentionally, when he wrote the first Nightmare on Elm Street, trapped an ancient demon in the form of Freddy Krueger, sort of like in a box that, as long as culturally this box exists, the actual IRL demon is contained. But because Freddy's dead and there hasn't been a new Freddy movie in, 18 months at this point, the demon is trying to emerge into the world through another means. But he just kind of likes Freddy Krueger, so he's coming out as Freddy Krueger. He has to get by Heather Langenkamp, though, who in the cultural consciousness is the first person to have stopped him, as Nancy in the film Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes.
Some other stuff happens.
Shout out to Dylan. You didn't mention her son, Dylan.
Dylan, who's doing the little kid in a horror movie thing.
to a T in an excellent way.
He has to see some stuff, though. There's like that character's sort of shielded for a while, but then he gets the business eventually. Yeah.
He's got my favorite line in the movie, by the way.
Never sleep again.
Nope. It's
he does get to call her a bitch at one point.
It's God wouldn't take me. Favorite line in the movie. After Dylan tries to or successfully jumps off of jumps off of the excellent 1990s all metal playground gym and trying to reach for God to take him, and he falls. Caught, and God wouldn't take me.
I loved that scene because I like that guy, that actor who was just born to play a cop in movies.
Yes.
Who's playing himself, the actual actor who I forgot the name of. But
right. Nancy's dad, who I think of everyone in this movie, he's been in the most episodes we've done because we did the original Nightmare on Elm Street. And then I think he also plays the cop in Black Christmas. Yes, he does.
And we've done an episode on Black Christmas.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, we got the Canucksploitation box checked off last Christmas season.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That movie rocks.
Oh, Black Christmas is great.
That movie rocks. Can't recommend enough. But anyway, so this is the third time we've talked about that guy, and I forgot his name this time. Oh well.
It's okay.
Tom, I don't know. They say it in the movie.
I know. I forget too. I can look it up quick.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Wes Craven's also in this movie. There's a great bit in the end credits where they go through everyone, and everyone that's playing themselves says as themselves. And Freddy Krueger is also listed as himself.
That's awesome.
In the end credits.
Didn't catch that. Didn't catch that. But that's good.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I like this. I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say so much on the bigger plot things, but we can talk about the sort of meta of it all and the presaging scream, and I don't know.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think it's a good synopsis. I feel like
there's not a lot of Freddy in it.
Oh, I disagree.
There's a lot of the vibe of Freddy.
There's a lot of the claw.
Yeah,
right?
That's fair. There's a lot of the claw.
There's a lot of like.
But I was thinking, I don't know if like actual like demon Freddy Krueger has lines until the final sequence.
See, okay. I feel like there's more Freddy in it than I remembered. And so for context for listeners, I grew up, this was a heavy rental from Blockbuster in the Reedy household. So this was one that we thoroughly enjoyed in the house. And, you know, I think part of our joy was making fun of Dylan, as my brothers and I like to make fun of him. And then I think part of it too was just like, the meta aspect of it kind of blew our minds, right? And at this point, like, you know, I would have only been 4 when it came out, so I wasn't watching it when I was 4. So I think it was like, well, yeah, it was like post Scream maybe. So I was maybe like 7 or 8ish, right? Yeah. So it also was like a thing where, and I wanted to talk about this because I think like in watching it again, part of why I think Freddy's in it a lot is like or why I was more tuned to it is because so much of the movie is about Dylan being young and the fear of him watching Heather's movies, right? And so like I remembered Freddy being in it when I was a kid. I was also a kid watching horror movies that probably scared me more and watching them like more than I should have. But yeah, I was surprised at how much he was in it. And yeah, I guess it is more like his, like the claw, which is a different, you know, like, so Freddy looks a little bit different in this movie. The claw is not a glove. It's kind of got that weird bone glove structure thing. Yeah. So it's like the demon liked Freddy, but like needed to do an upgrade.
Jason X style nanobot.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. A more kind of like,
yeah. Because the face is different.
Biomedical Freddy or something like that. Yeah, the face is different. The clothes are a little bit different.
Which coming off of Jason X, if you look at like how Jason looks throughout the series, you're like, oh, they didn't have a good budget for this one.
Yeah.
Whereas it feels like throughout the Nightmare films, there's maybe more intention to the ebbs and flows of how he's looking. But.
Yeah, and I think like, so I feel like Freddy's in it quite a bit. Mm-hmm. I feel like you have Robert Englund's like introduction when she's on the talk show and he comes out as Freddy. You have the casket scene, which I think is great. That's a good scene. I like that. Yeah, you have like he's not as comical in this, right? Like he's not like which I think is like
darker, as Robert Englund says creepily over the phone.
Exactly. And I think that's part of like Wes Craven. You know, I read a little bit after watching it about him feeling this is more his original intention for Freddy, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and I think this is, you know, Wes kind of like I imagine like conflicted, right? Like obviously grateful for Freddy as a character that made his career, but at the same time, it's like one of those you had to be there moments. Like Freddy Krueger was everywhere, and he kind of became like the idea that everybody started cheering for this child molester that got burnt as this kind of like quippy, funny guy is like crazy.
Yeah.
Like, and so I imagine he was kind of like conflicted, wanting to write himself out of that. And this was the way to do it. And so I think maybe it seems like Freddy's not in it a lot because it's not the Freddy we're used to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally fair. Yeah. The idea of Freddy is the whole through line of the movie, right?
Yeah. I mean, but also like, to be fair, a lot of Heather / Nancy.
Yeah. I like Heather Langenkamp.
Yeah, which I like her in this movie better than some of the other.
Yeah.
But to her point too, she's not really relevant in the franchise outside of like 1 and what is it? 1, 4, and a little bit of 3.
Yeah.
You know?
I think she said, I did 1 and 3 and that's it in this movie. But that's, again, grain of salt. I haven't seen anything besides 1 and 7.
Yeah. She's definitely, I mean, her role in Dream Warriors is like nowhere near what it is in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Part, like the first one. So I really liked her in it. I felt like too, the movie has a little bit of that like Hollywood meta thing going on, which similar to Maxine, to go back to what I've been watching recently. And I also thought it was interesting too, because it's totally the same thing that Maxine has this bit about, like, it's a very meta movie as well. And there's a director in it that talks about having like A movie ideas and B movies, which is this movie to a T, right? Like this is almost like the, how do you keep scaring people when the slasher is dead? And you know, like I'm not the biggest Wes Craven fan in the world. But I definitely give it to him in like this and the original Scream and kind of moving the ball forward for a genre that was getting a little bit more of a parody of itself than anything. Yeah.
You can tell, I mean, between this and Scream, he's preoccupied with, okay, how do we keep this from being just stale, just nonsense, just like a thing people laugh at, but we make money.
Yeah. And like, I think too, like a sincere, like, okay, the integrity of the art form, right? Like, how do we stop? Like, how do we make the genre interesting again?
Yeah.
After, you know, a decade of like boobs and guts, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's interesting. He kind of tries to get like sideways to like, well, let's just make them actually scary again.
Yeah. But how do you make somebody scary again who's been like the kind of the Joker, you know what I mean? Like the kind of jokester figure.
And then 2 years later, he's like, what if we just destroy the entire genre?
Yeah. But it, like, and I think too, what he does in Scream that's kind of interesting is like, it becomes a teen movie again.
Yep.
You know, whereas like, this is not, this is
right. These are like adults with children.
Yeah. This is like
going to work.
Heather's biggest fear is her son kind of like consuming horror films that that gave her the life that she has. Right. And it's like, well, duh, lady, of course, like your husband, like dude Chase, like makes props for horror films.
Yeah.
You are, you know, the star of one of the largest horror film franchises in history. And you're worried about your young son watching like these movies. But I think that that's something that like the movie itself probably, you know, truly was ahead of its time. I think because it is dealing with like kind of adult concerns, right? Like the kind of, you know, you think about, you know, parental advisory things on albums and kind of like the rating system. And I think what I imagine Wes Craven realizes like, oh, the audience for this should be a teen. And that's what Scream did successfully. But as an adult, like I'm about to have my first kid. And as an adult watching this, I'm like, oh, all right. Like there's some actual depth to her fear.
Yeah.
You know, and like, and what she's concerned about. That I think is maybe, you know, definitely was lost on me when I was young watching it.
Yeah. And just making fun of Danny.
Yeah.
Right. or whatever, Dylan.
Dylan.
Obviously, they're doing a Danny thing. It's fine.
I don't know. I was also on the note of Dylan, pleased to find out that I wrote down his name. The actor that played him, Milo Hughes. Shout out that he seems to live a relatively normal life despite being a child actor.
It's good for him.
Put out a few albums.
Oh wow.
He's also in a couple other horror movies too, so he's like kind of been in that kind of role a bit. Pet Sematary, most famously. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah, not that one.
But yeah, he. I was glad. I was a little worried for Dylan. You know, Milo. I was like, what fate did he succumb? But he seems good. He seems all right.
It's good, especially like kids that are in horror movies. If they were hopefully good sets, like a lot of them they didn't do stuff after that. Like I've already mentioned Danny. He didn't do a ton of stuff. Yeah, I think he has a cameo in.
Was that a good
in
set,
Dr. Sleep?
Was that a good set?
I don't know. Oh, this is our first episode since Shelley Duvall died.
Oh, yeah.
So RIP to a real one.
Yeah, for sure.
We haven't done Popeye yet, but one day.
That'd be a good one to do.
She's amazing in The Shining. She's so good.
She's so good in The Shining. Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of things that have happened since the last time we've recorded. Because it's been a few weeks.
Just some minor things that occurred.
History's happening quick these days.
Just some minor things.
Anyway, you say the girl who plays Newt in Aliens.
Yep.
Sort of didn't do anything. They didn't pursue acting as an adult. Or anything,
no.
So, and that's probably like the best case scenario for child actors is, they find a real job and they don't drive themselves crazy trying to recapture when they were 7 years old or whatever. Because that's tough hole that a lot of them fall into.
Yeah.
But all to say, would there still be things in this watch that you're like, I would make fun of this kid for this?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Child acting is tough, and this kid is in this movie a lot.
My favorite idea, or my favorite, I mean, obviously the claw reaching across, and then the great montage they have later where they have to re-show it. The Danny voice is great. I also like to think about the earthquake scenes and the fact that, you know, obviously there's not an earthquake happening. Yeah. So I love to think about Wes Craven giving this kid direction to like steady himself. And when you watch it, it's so obviously like, I mean, he's a kid actor, so I'll be
a little nice exaggerated, I'm guessing.
But it's very funny to see and just to visualize, okay, what if this camera wasn't shaking at the moment and you just have this kid trying to act like there's an earthquake? It's awesome.
Yeah. I had the thought a couple times, but I remember specifically thinking it when Heather Langenkamp's running back to her house from the hospital, where it's like, man, sometimes I feel bad for parents who like, you just get to a point where the kid's just not working with them at all. And like all the other adults are blaming the parent. It's like, this kid's just like being such a jerk right now. Yeah. And I realized in the context of the movie, he's being chased by Freddy Krueger. He's just trying to get home to Rex. This all makes sense. But just like, man, I feel bad for Heather Langenkamp. Her kid's really putting her in a bad position here.
Yeah.
The kid just won't be cool for her sake.
The kid won't be cool. Also, like, remember his fucking T-Rex. Sorry. Remember his T-Rex.
We can swear. It's
okay,
fine. Cool.
Remember his T-Rex. You know what I mean? Like, you go home. First of all, like, you go home.
That's a good point.
Times.
She had so many opportunities. And as she said, it's pretty close to the hospital.
Yeah. It's just across the freeway, you know? Like,
just go get the damn stuff.
Just go get it. And then also, like, you have this weird babysitter woman / friend that's like, ask her to go get the T-Rex. Like, get your kid his damn stuffed animal. Like,
she was too involved in like a very literal sense in which, that wasn't her kid and she got killed pretty bad about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Too involved. Also too involved and underdeveloped at the same time. Like she's in the opening like 20 minutes.
Yeah. I thought it was like almost a red herring. Like, oh, she did some kind of ritual and is helping bring Freddy back. I don't think that would fit in this movie.
Yeah.
But just the way she was just there and then sort of like showed up at the hospital later, like, ooh, why is she here now? And it's like, oh no, she was a character the whole time.
Like, we killed Chase. Heather needs somebody else to play off of. And that's like my one critique of the movie.
One adult that's kind of on her side.
Yeah, exactly. like helping Heather, wrangle demented Dylan or something. My one kind of like complaint of the movie in rewatching it, which obviously wasn't watching it for the plot as a child, but now kind of I do feel like all the ingredients for the meta he hits.
Yeah.
And some of the action sequences, barring the crossing the freeway, which I think is one of the most atrocious things I've ever seen put on film.
When that big Freddy came into the clouds, it's like, oh no, Wes, come on.
That was but everything else,
like green screening,
like the kind of like the disembodied claw hand was cool.
Yeah.
The kind of Chase's kill scene was cool. The babysitter's kill scene in the hospital was cool. The tongue out of the phone, like it's got some memorable kind of like it's got some memorable scenes in it. But watching it for the plot, my one critique of the movie is like he almost didn't hit home on the home life aspect of it.
Yeah. Because I mean the dad is out of the picture after one scene with the rest of the family.
Like, because he goes off on his like job site, right?
There's a couple phone calls. There's the dream sequence at the beginning, but actually being with his wife and the kid, it's the one scene. Yeah,
and then I feel like he just doesn't he didn't establish it enough in a way that I think, he obviously course corrects when he makes Scream, where he establishes that town. He establishes, the teenagers, the news reporter. Like, that's a lot of the heavy lifting of that movie, is doing such a good job setting all the pieces up on the board and then letting them do their thing. And I imagine like part of that is like, okay, you have this massive character, Freddy, and he probably is concerned, like Freddy has to be in this a bit. It can't just be this lady kind of losing it, getting these phone calls, right? And so I get it. I felt like the dream sequences, like the beginning dream sequence, like really clever, really well done. But yeah, I felt like he definitely could have tightened up her, like Heather as a character / herself.
Yeah. She has to do a lot of yelling and running and screaming. And I think she's specifically doing Shelley Duvall in The Shining some of the times when she's like running and the kind of like out of breath thing.
Yeah.
Specifically the way Shelley Duvall speaks in the scene where Jack Nicholson is trying to get the bat from her.
Uh-huh.
He's talking like this. And I feel like Heather Langenkamp's doing that a lot in this movie, which I like.
I didn't put together the Shining connection though, but I definitely see it there. Yeah. Like I think it's almost too, it's like anytime you see the spirit stuff sort of come up, it's hard not to think of the kind of Shining aspect of it.
One thing that I think stood out from the first Nightmare on Elm Street to me, watching it for the first time only like a year and a half ago or whatever it was that it's not that jokey yet. Freddy doesn't call anyone bitch in the first one. He's not the Joker yet, but it still has sort of like that kind of comic timing or vibe to some things. But there's like some images that just stick out so much. The girl in the body bag in the hallway, Johnny Depp's death scene, the first kill, Tina, I think, that gets on the ceiling that they do homage to in this one with the babysitter, which was, I loved that. That was cool.
Yeah.
When they started doing that. Then I don't know if there's as many like just single images that stand out to me in this one. I think the kid on top of the playground might be the big one because he was really high up there.
Yeah. Yeah. God wouldn't take him.
God wouldn't take him.
I shouldn't laugh at that.
It's good,
but it's really good.
Speaking of imagery, is there an established like hell pit that this is like Freddy's area? He's got like a barrel of snakes for a bit about snakes. Mm-hmm. You do a slide down through his mouth, and now you're in his little realm down here. Is that in other movies?
Yeah, like there are definitely.
Is that like, I guess what the better question is, that just the boiler room realm, kind of?
It's kind of like an extension of the boiler room sort of situation.
Gotcha.
So, I think the other thing too, you brought up the kind of like the lore of Wes Craven describing, like writing the story. I think there's a lot of Hellraiser influence on this movie as well.
I've never seen any Hellraisers.
So. Okay. I think there's a lot of that, right? Like there's a lot of like which is another movie that I think changed the game in the 90s for horror films. Like maybe the first, like the late 80s, early 90s, like Hellraiser. And I have to think Wes Craven, like, I mean, because that's Clive Barker, right? Like he's a new face of horror. He's kind of crowned kind of like by Stephen King and others to kind of be like the next face of it, right? And so I imagine too that kind of like upped the competitive aspect of Wes Craven. And I definitely got vibes of like the kind of Cenobite hell from the going through Freddy's mouth and things like that. And also like more menacing, right? Like instead of just being jokey, like, I mean, Pinhead is like a super menacing kind of strange thing. But yeah, I definitely got those vibes from it. I did like that a lot though. I liked them coming out of his mouth. I like the tongue like wrapped like.
Oh, yeah, I like snake. All of this, I should say. I was just wondering like
the visual, like if
if he always ends up here for his like final stand.
Yeah,
whatever.
The snakes are definitely a big thing. The burning's always a big thing because that's like how he's
afraid of fire.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. And then the snake, like I thought it was clever in this one how Dylan cuts his tongue and cuts the snake tongue into it is kind of cool. But yeah, I feel like that's kind of another thing too. It's hard for me not to think of like the covers of these VHS tapes when I'd go to Blockbuster as a kid. And it wasn't New Nightmare. I think it was actually one of the Jason movies that had all the snakes coming out of the Jason mask. One of the Friday the 13th movies. It might be the final chapter, I think, which was spoiler alert, not the final chapter.
Not at all.
But yeah, I feel like, kind of leaned into that. A lot of these franchises leaned into that kind of snake fire imagery. I mean, it's like, of course, why wouldn't you?
Long legs. There's the cuts to just red and snakes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Not immediately connected to what you were talking about.
No. It's funny. It's like, it's definitely like, it makes sense too, like kind of, and I'm not going to get into like the kind of current political climate, but like where we at as a world, like where we are at now compared to like, the 90s was the start of the waking up from the 80s hangover, right? Like the Reagan hangover was kind of ending. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we've been binging that as a society, right? And that's kind of like everybody's like, oh, why are horror films kind of like having their moment again, or like trying to locate why? And it's like, well, because like, this is what an empire in decline is drawn to. It's like you watch horror films to relieve some of your anxiety, right? And that's where we're at.
I mean, that's scary. Well, yeah. I mean,
like when we realize that the Avengers aren't going to come save us, I
was trying to think of the specific years that the 3 John Carpenter Apocalypse trilogy movies came out.
Oh, it's 82.
Yep.
Prince of Darkness is like 90. I would say it's like 90, 95, 96, 97 maybe.
I think
and then
In the Mouth of Madness is 94.
Like 94. Okay. So Prince of Darkness might be late 80s then.
This is like findable information. Prince of Darkness is 87. So
87. Oh, damn.
Right on the dang button.
Earlier than I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. So 82, 87, 94.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. Which like, I think, in a funny way, like we're what, like 30 years from that? We're kind of having that moment again of like, okay, we're kind of moved away from the Final Destination into like the kind of Korean and Japanese influenced horror films. in Hollywood. Like we've moved beyond those phases.
American
of, like,
remakes.
Yeah, we moved beyond the American remakes of the Korean and Japanese horror films, and we've kind of like we're in this interesting time where you have like Neon, A24 making these movies, which for all intents and purposes, like New Line Cinema, is kind of like certainly they have their offices in this movie, right? Like when Heather goes to the offices and it's kind of like these wooden cubicles and it kind of looks very 90s-ish.
Now, do the Lord of the Rings movies already in development at this point?
I don't know.
That's New Line. So
I don't think they are. Lord of the Rings stuff is like late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah,
right?
because they work on it for a bit.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think by 94 they're not already.
But I feel like like that was the start, like the 90s being the start of like Miramax.
Yeah.
And like all these kind of like independent you kind of like post Orion starting like,
and so 94 is also Pulp Fiction, so
which is Miramax's big thing, right? And so like you kind of get that same moment right now where you have these like kind of interesting just outside of Hollywood, big studio, but still have some pretty solid financial backing. And they're looking at like horror movies, like genre movies to kind of stabilize them, right? Or like, and I'm sure, I don't think this movie did incredibly well. It got pretty panned, It still does, I think. I think a lot of people don't like it.
That's kind of crazy to me, but
I think it's one of the better Nightmare on Elm Street movies. It's like one of the better Freddy movies.
Yeah, I without qualifications liked this movie for sure.
Yeah, I like it better than the original. Like I like Dream Warriors a lot. Dream Warriors is kind of like stupid fun.
It is the lowest grossing movie in the Nightmare series.
Yeah, right. Which is kind of wild, but
yeah.
I think it kind of like. I think it deserves its flowers. Like it's kind of like doing.
It's also the last Freddy appearance until Freddy versus Jason in 2003.
Yeah. So, funnily enough, in trying to act like they're not killing Freddy, they ended up killing him. Right? Like for all intents and purposes.
His face turned into that Party City level puppet at the end, and his eyes went pop. So yeah, they couldn't get him back till 2003.
Yeah.
Or technically his glove comes out at the end of Jason Goes to Hell, right?
Yeah.
Whatever.
But that's pretty much like, yeah, like it's wild. You know what I mean? That like people were clearly,
kind of over it, I guess.
Clamoring for it. And then Wes Craven was like, okay, here you go. And then they're like, no.
Not like
and
that.
And he's like, okay, I'll just put like a little goofy mask on him and you guys will eat this up. And that's what happened. Do you know what I mean? Like, We'll make the ghost face, and the rest is history, right?
Yeah. I feel like has there even been since Ghostface an enduring new slasher character, or really any like continuing series
that isn't like a rehash of something?
Anything like a series based around the recurring villain versus
Jeepers Creepers, but that's only 3 movies, and we don't really talk about that one anymore because of what that dude did. That's kind of,
Yeah, that guy's, he's like a big moth or something.
Jeepers Creepers guy?
Yeah.
Have you seen Jeepers Creepers?
I've seen the first one. He has wings, and he's kind of buggy.
Kind of, yeah.
Sort of gross.
It's kind of like a bug guy.
Okay.
He's not Mothman. We're not saying he's Mothman.
No, Mothman never would have taken Justin Long's eyes like that.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
But yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, are there like slasher characters? Like, yeah, this is kind of like the last Ghostface, kind of last one.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense you wouldn't try to do one after Ghostface, but
yeah, that would have been bold.
Would have been bold.
Yeah,
I'd be down though.
I mean, it would have been cool to see a female slasher, like a female character slasher.
Yeah. They could do Invisible Man as like it's a Scream style. It's a different person every time, but they're just invisible again. It's another Invisible Man situation.
Yeah, that could work.
Yeah.
You don't ever see who it is though, because they stay invisible.
Yeah. And one time it's a woman and you're like, ooh, progress.
How would you tell? How would you tell?
I don't know. That'd be the trick. You find out at the end. You're like, damn, this movie was, and then the title that's when the title card comes up.
The Invisible Woman.
And it says Invisible Woman. You're like, wow.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yep. You wait on that title card drop. Credits.
But yeah.
Mic drop.
I mean, what else? So there's some other things I want to talk about with this movie.
Oh, I really like the tongue coming out of the phone, not just as a callback, but there's times in movies that I realize what I really like is something to just really fucked up happen. Yeah. And it's when I, as like a sick freak, I'm like, that was great. I loved that. And the fact that he goes, I touched him. And then he like licks it. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And that was
Which is also a throwback.
Yes.
Also a throwback to the original kind of like,
I'll be your boyfriend now.
But also why Freddy's awful, right? Like,
he sucks. That's what he does.
He molested kids, and it's like,
there's a reason he phrased it like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a good point. Wes Craven's like, hey, that's this guy's deal.
Yeah. This is also unrelated to what we've kind of been talking about. But I do also think in terms of maybe influences on Wes Craven, heavy Lynchian vibes in this movie.
The dreamlike and set in L.A.
Yep.
Jack and Jill.
We live in a dream within a dream, the kind of dream layer.
Yep.
I think the differences are huge, but I think there's a bit of like that B movie acting that Wes Craven likes, that Lynch also loves. Yeah. The L.A. the dream heavy surrealism. Lynch takes it to places that I'm not sure he knows where he's taking it. Whereas Wes Craven, I think, likes a tighter knit story, right? like, but at the same time, I think I was kind of struck by, that kind of maybe exchange between the two of them. And also like thinking of Lynch as maybe getting more recognition as a serious filmmaker as opposed to Wes Craven. And I kind of almost can't believe I'm saying this because I'm not a huge Wes Craven fan, but it's kind of surprising, right? Like, obviously Wes Craven didn't make Elephant Man or something like that, right? But I think at the same time, Lynch is a horror he directs horror films by and large.
Yeah.
But he kind of gets the kind of shine of being this kind of independent auteur. Whereas I think if you would say that about Wes Craven, or, I think people have definitely come around on John Carpenter as well, but they even still don't get as much credit maybe as Lynch does, or the fanboy aspect of it. And I love Lynch too. I love Lynch too, but like, I do feel like there's all these movies are kind of in communication with one another. It's just like Lynch didn't make a franchise out of, Jack Nance as Eraserhead or something like that. Yeah. But like,
yeah, but he made Dune.
He did. He couldn't do the franchise thing, right? That's kind of his limitations.
He was almost, depending on who you ask, almost or not really. Maybe they had one conversation with George Lucas, but almost made Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
But made Dune instead.
Yeah. Which I like Dune too. I like that Dune better than the new Dune series. Not gonna lie.
I just love Kyle MacLachlan.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, so 92, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me from New Line Cinema.
Yeah.
There you go. So they were in the offices around the same time, at least.
Right. In the office at the same time, clearly both in LA. And, Fire Walk with Me is genuinely one of the most terrifying movies I've seen, I think.
So good.
But yeah,
it probably is. Yeah.
And also, like, I think to the point, what Freddy, your point of like, this is what this guy actually does. He touches kids. Like, that's what Twin Peaks is all about as well. Right. Like,
yeah. Specifically Fire Walk with Me.
Exactly.
Just like, no, this is the bad stuff. This is what that shit was about.
Yeah. You think
not like the jokey Americana stuff.
Exactly.
That you motherfuckers didn't get.
Yeah. Season 2 is real goofy. Goes off the rails when Lynch leaves. But like, just in case you forgot, like, Laura Palmer did live a very fucked up life.
Yeah.
And all, Benjamin Horne is a shitty dude and Leland Palmer is a shitty dude.
And this is what Donna's always looked like. This has been Donna the whole time.
I mean, I could go on about Dylan if you want some more Dylan content.
That's actually where I wanted to start. In terms of child actors, who's like your Mount Rushmore? Who are some of your favorite child actor performances? Or maybe an easier question: what are some particularly bad ones that stick in the memory?
Okay, good one in the original Omen. Kid who plays Damien, very good.
That kid has a stare and a half. He's great.
Also, the kid who plays in Children of the Corn. What's his name? Have you seen Children of the Corn?
No.
Okay. There's
just syllabically, I always confuse it with Village of the Damned, which I have seen.
Okay, which I like Village of the Damned too. Are you talking about the John Carpenter
yes,
one?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Children of the Corn. Is he Malachi?
Okay.
I don't know if that's his name.
I've seen just like, whatever clip of children
it's
in Corn.
Isaac, sorry.
Yeah.
Isaac played by John Franklin. Good horror film kid. The original kid in The Omen, who's very creepy.
I mentioned Danny before. That's probably my goat.
Danny's good. Dylan's up there with one of the bad horror film performances. Sorry, Dylan.
He's asked to do a lot and he can't do it.
Yes. He's asked to do
a lot and he can do none of it.
A lot.
And I think, on the Danny point in The Shining, a lot of that is just how the director in that situation is utilizing the tool of having a kid and just being like, okay, do exactly this.
Yes. I do like the kids.
Don't perform, just do exactly what I'm telling you to do.
Yeah. I do like the kids in Poltergeist as well.
Oh, sure.
I think they're really good.
Yeah. Poltergeist is one I only watched for the podcast within the last couple of years and was like, this fucking rocks.
Yeah.
Poltergeist is great.
And I think the kids are really good in it. I think she does deadpan really well. Like kind of much better than the fake creepy voice that Dylan's doing.
Poor Dylan.
Yeah, no. I mean, we could.
He's not set up to succeed with the stuff he's got to do.
No, yeah. I don't know what other kid ones stand out as bad to you.
Well, I guess outside of horror, there's a lot of just like kid movies, right? But I don't really normally think of that. I think it's in horrors when they're asked to, portray something.
Yes.
Season 1 Stranger Things kids, I think, are good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they do a good job. But that also feels like they were selected like boy band in the 90s style to be like great kids. Not just, I feel like, 80s, 90s movies, they're getting these kids. Yeah. 70s Omen, these are just some kids they found.
Yeah. Like the kid from The Omen, and like you kind of believe that he's evil.
Right.
Because there's no way that his parents were grooming him to be an actor. He just like looked menacing. He just
get that kid away from him.
Just looked like the fucking devil, and the actor was like him now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think. What other kid actors? I hate the family in Close Encounters. Those kids suck.
That's a great. I think Spielberg has the quote of like, yeah, if I had been a father at the time, I don't know if I would have rated that the dude just gets in a spaceship and leaves at the end.
Yeah.
Like, fuck my family.
Yeah.
I'm never going to see them again, and I don't even have a second thought.
Yep. I feel like Signs, don't love the kids in Signs. At least, like the little girl who ends up being a Little Miss Sunshine, she's pretty good in it. But the young kid, when he has his asthma attack, and Mel Gibson being like, it didn't get in, he wasn't breathing. It's like, that's not how asthma works, buddy. If he didn't breathe in, then he would be dead. Hate to break it to you. But it's also like way overacting on that kid's behalf. Yeah. And similarly, I feel like M. Night asking him to do a lot. So I'll be kinder, like in my, be kind to the kid actor. But
I think any precocious, smart genius kid is always a bad character for me. It's not like the actor's fault, but I think of like the girl in the new Ghostbusters movies who's just
didn't see that.
There's just like a little kid that's a genius.
Okay.
That character always sucks, I think.
Yeah. Some kid who's beyond their means, like a plot device more than anything.
Yeah. No, what if we did? Whatever.
What? Say it. Go ahead.
Oh no, just like a kid being like, "Oh, I know exactly what you did," and you're like, "Oh, shut up, kid." No, you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I guess if we extend outside of horror, it's like some of the best, child performances. It's like the 400 blows. Sure.
Yeah.
That's not where my brain went.
Yeah. Mouchette. Yes. Agreed. The Apu trilogy. It's like, yeah, there's obviously some great.
Haley Joel Osment in AI.
Yeah, and in Sixth Sense.
Yeah, in Sixth Sense. That's probably I would have put that first, but IMDb has weird lists. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
There's some Natalie Portman performances from it.
Yeah, I mean, in Leon the Professional, she's great in that.
Obviously, Jake Lloyd in Phantom Menace. Asking her if she's an angel. Leave it up to your imagination which, if I'm saying best or worst for that. Almost ruined that guy's life.
It's hard for me not to think of the Patton Oswalt skit when I think of Phantom Menace of like, oh yeah, he's just talking about George Lucas making everybody.
What was he doing as a kid?
You think Angelina Jolie's hot? Yeah, she really turns you on. What if I showed you a picture of John Voight's ball sack?
I just like the stuff I like. I don't need to know where it comes from.
Yeah. Definitely what it feels like every time I think of like what the impetus for Phantom Menace was other than money. It's just like,
what if he was a little kid?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess.
What if he was no longer a father, but he was the son? It's like,
oh, right, that's what the
yeah.
It's a pretty good George Lucas too.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, kid actor stuff is hard.
Yeah.
And
well said.
And I feel like, good pivot on his behalf of changing from like mother, son to like just teens and then horny sheriff and news reporter and Scream.
Scream movies are so good.
They're okay. They're good. They're good. I like them, but like I haven't seen anything beyond Scream 1 in a while.
Did you see 4?
They all blur together.
The first 3 Screams are what, 96, 97, 99?
Probably, yeah.
Or 2000 or whatever. But then there's an 11-year gap to Scream 4. Then there's an 11-year gap to Scream 5. Yeah. Scream 4 is, I think, the last one Wes Craven does.
Okay.
And
I don't know if I saw that.
It's
who's in it? Who's Courtney
Emma
Cox?
Roberts is like one of the.
I've definitely not seen it.
It's like Nev Campbell's cousin who's young but is going through a Ghostface type situation.
Okay.
Allison Brie is briefly in it.
Okay.
She's good. She's good at it.
Yeah.
She's briefly in it though. You can guess why her part's so brief.
Is she the Drew Barrymore of this one?
Not quite that.
Okay.
I think Scream 4 is the one that has the really good intro where it's just a montage of different people stabbing each other.
Okay.
That's different people like watching a stab movie and then also stabbing someone.
Okay.
In my head, that's how it goes. It's like, it ends up with like Kristen Bell and Anna Paquin, I think.
I've definitely not seen this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who I think are playing themselves.
Okay.
And then maybe stab each other. This is maybe blurring with a lot of different things too.
That sounds like Wes Craven getting high on his own supply at that point.
Yes.
I do. Nev Campbell's also in The Craft. So I'm sure you know that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm not a fan of Nev Campbell.
Okay. Well, Scream 6 is safe for you then because she's not in that one.
I'll key into that one.
It's good. Scream 6 is a weird beast because Jenna Ortega's like the little sister of the main character in Scream 5.
Okay.
And then in between them became one of the most famous people on the planet.
Yeah.
So they had to rejigger it to be like, she's also the main character, but the lady who was the main character, we'd feel bad if she's not in this one. So
also in X. So connects to Maxine, Jenna Ortega. So,
Yeah.
So we're finding all the connects. It's a small world, the film world.
She's good in X, but definitely they play into like, she looks like she's 14 thing in a weird way.
Yeah.
In a sleazy 70s way, which is on purpose.
Yes.
And it's like, I recognize what you're doing, but it still kind of feels weird.
Say more.
No, I'm going to cut this out. X is great. It does a lot of. It's doing
it connects with Freddy, dude. Keep going.
How does it connect? Ooh, you know how kids are scared of Freddy? Yeah.
Yeah.
She doesn't look like a legal adult in that film. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, it's
that poor cameraman.
Yeah. I feel like I need to rewatch X after watching Maxine. But yeah. I to go back. We're losing the thread here. To go back to
kid actors, and then I was going to ask you for a rating.
Okay, go ahead. Rating.
Anyway, those are some of the kid actor performances. I guess I mean Jenna Ortega in X. One of the best ones.
It's going to be funny when we edit all that out and you end with just that.
Eek. I don't even know if I can. Let's get to ratings. So scale 0.5 to 5. On any scale you're choosing aside from stars, what would you give Wes Craven's New Nightmare? The 1994 smash flop.
I'm trying to think. It's going to be 3 of something. And I'm trying to think of what.
I'm trying to remember what I did for Nightmare on Elm Street, but I didn't think of it in time to go back.
Okay.
But 3, I feel like most of the scratches is always in sets of 3.
Yeah.
So you got that as an option.
Yeah. It's going to be, it's going to be 3 Dylans reaching towards God.
Three rejection letters in Dylan's mailbox.
Yeah.
From God.
Yeah. That'll be my out of 5. Yeah.
I'm an easy grader, and I appreciate this, which means I can't go below 3.5.
Okay.
So I'm going to go 3.5. I was going to go with like God rejections also. But,
okay. Sorry about that.
No, it's totally fine. 3.5 games of Skin the Cat.
Oh, nice. I like that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might be the first line where Demon Freddy is on screen and says something, as opposed to just through the phone or whatever. I don't know.
Does he not say anything like
when he jumps out at Nancy in the bedroom? He must say something, I think, actually, too. I don't remember if he says anything in the casket scene. The husband like comes to life and says like, "Stay with me."
That's right. Yeah, and bleeds through his eyes.
Yeah, creepy.
Yeah,
creepy.
It's a good scene.
Good scene. Yeah, that's a good one. I like weird liminal spaces, which be due to the dreamlike quality of these movies. They always have them. The 2 that I've seen.
The fire in the sky tube sort of esque thing.
Yeah. But like when she sticks her head in the coffin and all of a sudden it's a long tunnel coffin, like that. When she gets under the sheets and all of a sudden it's a long tunnel. Yeah. Always works for me. I'm like, that looks kind of fun, also terrifying.
Yeah, it's like it's the kid logic, right? Like this is what you're afraid of when you're a kid, and this is also like how you perceive these things. I remember on this note, as a kid watching this, I felt like Rex played a much larger role in the movie. Like I seem to recall Rex like actually fighting, but like
I can't believe they didn't do that because they build it up so much.
Yeah.
And then they just don't do that. I really thought a dinosaur was going to save them at the end, and I was so excited to see what that would look like a year after Jurassic Park.
In my recollection, that
with a substantially lower budget.
That happens in my recollection. That like
it feels like it should.
Yeah, right? It's like because he gets he's at the end of the bed and he's kind of sitting there with the claw marks and the stuffing coming out, and then it's just like she just keeps forgetting it. And then by the end, it's like, okay, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't protect Dylan at all.
No, it doesn't.
So it's like, okay.
Yeah. And to your point about earlier, just go home and get it or just remember it. She's acting like, oh, yeah, my annoying kid just needs his safety blanket to go to sleep. It's like, no, you know that if he doesn't have that, this thing seems to be protecting his life in a very literal way.
Yeah.
Just go home and grab it, lady.
Also, we didn't talk about. I'm remembering all these things now. All right, sorry.
And again, I liked this movie.
Yeah, me too. The lady at the hospital, like the head doctor at the hospital.
I was going to ask if you remember. I don't know if this was a big thing in the 90s or if I was just in the age group that this was happening to in the 90s. But like the cops were essentially called on this lady has let this kid watch scary movies.
Yes.
There was other things too, and erratic behavior in a restricted area, sure. But like the main thing that was like, can you believe this lady's letting her kid watch scary movies? Which in my head was a big thing in the 90s. Like, oh, you can't let
for sure.
I mean, it's the Columbine thing, right?
Columbine thing. It's the kids. The kids who listen to metal and Metallica, who like the Mississippi, right? They were
right. Yeah. Coming off of Satanic Panic.
Yeah, exactly.
70s.
Like all of that stuff. And that, video game, like Hillary Clinton with video games are going to, like cause kids to Grand Theft Autos.
Mortal Kombat is making everyone kill each other.
For sure. Yeah. And so, yeah, I definitely think that that's his, like, that's Wes Craven's commentary on that. But also just like, another thing is like, Heather, just stay in the hospital with your kid. Why do you even need to go home? What do you need to go home for? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. She makes a lot of bad choices.
I feel like that's in me, obviously she's making bad choices, but like that's where Wes Craven just like didn't really know what he was doing yet. He didn't really have the framework for the meta that he needed. He just knew he needed to make Freddy scary again. And meta was a way to do that. But he didn't actually care about Heather being a mother.
The moment to moment mechanics of the plot are not there.
No, which is like what stops it from getting like, I think 4 stars, which is like what I would give something like Scream, right?
Yeah.
Like it stops it from elevating it to like, oh, that's great. He's a little bit too enthralled with like the oh my God, the story's being written as it's being shown to you.
Yes.
Like the kind of feel good ending sort of situation of it.
Yeah. No, that
also,
makes sense.
we didn't also talk about the Hansel and Gretel sort of overtones, the fairy tale overtones.
Oh yeah,
which I think fits into his whole kind of like, his slight kind of being like you act like kind of horrific things in children's stories are a new thing, right? Like if you go back to the Grimm fairy tales, like.
And she's like, "Oh, this is too intense for you. We need to put it away." And it's literally a fairy tale.
Yeah. And it's also something that like, in a nice tie everything up sort of way helps her find Dylan because she decides to like overdose on sleeping pills to like go find him.
Yep.
Like the breadcrumb bits, which like
you left me a way to find you.
Yeah.
Or to get to you or to join you.
Yeah, exactly. Which is like a clever device. And I felt like he almost like, obviously like Dylan kind of trapping Freddy in the oven. I felt like he could have maybe introduced that earlier in the story to have it be a stronger through line, because it kind of happens like halfway through the movie. If not, it's the type of movie where I feel like it could stand 30 minutes being on the cutting room floor, and instead of being like 2 hours, it could be like an hour and a half and be really tight hour and a half.
Be super tight. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, he figured it out.
He eventually got there. Yeah.
But although I wish I was there to tell Wes what he needed to do. It's like
he needed notes for sure. He had no idea.
Yeah. Hey Wes, you don't know me, but I know you. Here's some notes.
So the question this month that's kind of threading through all of these episodes, curious if you have a good answer for this one. What is your favorite weird, misunderstood? The word we've been using is misunderstood. Also take it as your favorite bad movie or your favorite movie that other people are like, that movie's crazy or whatever. But we've been mostly using your favorite misunderstood movie. But you can straight up go, a movie that most people think is terrible, but you love.
Was I talking to you about The Counselor recently?
I don't think so.
No, I was talking to my friend on the phone. The Counselor.
Okay.
Written by Cormac McCarthy, directed by Ridley Scott, starring Michael Fassbender, Javier Bardem, Cameron Diaz. Widely kind of like panned when it came out, and I remember seeing it and I loved it. And I haven't rewatched it in a long time, but I do like the movie. I did like it when I saw it. Also, on that note, Killing Them Softly is another movie that I really like that I think people don't like. But those are two like not horror films.
Good answers. You had those ready to go too.
Yeah, no, those are movies that I think like. And The Counselor, the reason why I brought up The Counselor, because it's kind of getting its moment now. People are kind of like, oh, it's a good movie. And I'm like, yeah, you dunces. Like, it was a good movie.
You've been on that corner.
Yeah, it's like, I've been here. Thanks for showing up, everybody. But yeah, I like those are two of them. Maybe not my favorite, but those come to mind.
That's great.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on, we kind of covered everything?
We did. We solved it.
We solved it.
No other thoughts. I mean, thanks for having me again. I really enjoyed talking about. I really enjoyed talking about this movie. I really enjoyed rewatching the movie.
Yeah, same.
It because when I pitched it to you as like kind of predating Scream, I was working off of what I remembered when I was maybe like 10 or 11 years old, and I'm glad it did actually fulfill that.
Absolutely, it did. So. Yeah, and thank you for pitching it because it fits really well with this theme this month, I think. For sure. Next up, I think will be Halloween 3. So
ooh, very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
One more week till Halloween 3 or whatever. That's a reference to the movie. If you've seen it, you understand.
One more week till Halloween. Yeah, great movie.
So I'm bunching up at the end of the month and trying to put out, I think, 3 episodes in this last week, but it's fine.
That's fine.
It's going to be fine. Anyway, thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
You can find our stuff on Linktree, linktr.ee/late to the movies. It was noted to me recently that you can't find a way to email us there on Linktree. So I just say don't message us on Instagram if you need to get in touch. That one pops up on my phone. It's way easier to check. Yes. Anyway, see you next time.